In terms of race, it's white. There's no minorities in terms of African Americans. Not one filled out one of the surveys. Dayton is a city that's very segregated in terms of where people live. East Dayton, white. West Dayton, black. North is mostly white. South is mostly white. If there are minorities, they probably most of them will be in the northern part of the city, the northern suburbs. And Odd Body's the main venue is on the east side of town. So I don't know if that plays a role. It's not, the east side of Dayton is not really a dangerous place, but there could be perceptions from the others, from minorities, that it's not a good place to go. Obviously, I wouldn't know. It's not hard for me to go there. I'm white, so I don't know what how they feel about that. The second most group of people who filled out the surveys were Native Americans, which is a bit surprising to me. So those are the two main groups, but the main group, of course, is white. In terms of the age range of the members, the big orange one there is 41 to 50 years old, which probably isn't that surprising considering when metal got going. These people are around in the 80s, when they were teenagers in the 80s, so that makes a little bit of sense. And then 51 to 60 is about 7%, and over 60 is 2%. 19 to 30 years old is only 18%. That's important because there's not that many young people who are coming to shows, whether it's at Odd Bodies or whether it's at the other clubs where there are metal. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. So then in terms of the jobs, the white collar and blue collar, almost 70% are blue collar, have blue collar jobs, and about 20% are white collar jobs, office jobs. The 11% there, I couldn't tell. Either they're on disability, they're unemployed. I didn't know what the job was, and when I searched for it, I couldn't find it. That's sort of the other in that. And then finally, the length of time they've been in the scene. Greater than 13 years is the biggest amount there, 38%, almost 39%. The next one is 2 to 5 years. So there's some people that have just been there for 2 to 5 years. 0 to 1, 13.2%. A couple of the shows I went to where I got information, I think some of the people who filled that out were there for that band for that one time. So I think that number is probably a little bit inflated. I don't think it's really 13%. And then the 6 to 9 years is 12%, and 10 to 13 is 7.8%. So if you look at from 10 years on, it's almost 45. It is past 45%. So there's a lot of people in the scene that have been there for quite a while, and there's not that many that are coming in, which is, of course, is a big issue. So let me talk a little bit now about what the early founders are saying about the scene. Okay, so the first question I asked them is, what was the scene like when you first started going to shows? Most of these people, they're all men who were part of this, that I interviewed for this, no women. The way I did the studies, the earliest interviews I did throughout the entire scene, I would ask people, who are the ones who've been there the longest? Who are the people that were there at the beginning of the scene that you know about? Who were the bands that were there at the beginning? And then I would try to track down those people. Usually it was through Facebook. Sometimes I would get a phone number, or I would get an email address, and I would just try to find them. Most of the time they wanted to talk, and no one said no. They were just, we were playing phone tag and email tag and Facebook tag. There's one guy I have not been able to get yet, and it's getting kind of frustrating because we both wanted to do it, but we keep missing each other. And he's someone who was there right at the very start, so I got to find him before I do more of this. So anyway, what was it like when it first started? It was like a family. It was united. Many of them do not see it like that anymore, and we'll talk about that. It gave me a sense of belonging. Metal gave me a sense of belonging that I didn't have anywhere else. We hear that a lot in research as well. There were a few places to play, so they would rent halls on their own, VFWs. They just find anywhere to play. They had bigger crowds then. There was less chance for consequences, and that basically meant getting arrested or having the police come and break it up. Now, what came up often was that they were worried they were going to get pulled over for drunk driving. I guess there's more of a police presence in Dayton now than there used to be, or they're not as good as hiding their drunk driving. It was very supportive. It was very communal. People knew each other and had respect for each other. I think if you look sort of underneath some of these comments, they're saying in many ways it's not like that anymore after I asked some more questions. There wasn't really competition between bands. Dayton sits between Cincinnati to the south and Columbus to the north. Both of those places have metal scenes. Cincinnati's is kind of known as one where there's a lot of competition. Bands will try to steal gigs. They'll backbite other bands to get them out of gigs. That's not the way Dayton has ever been. That's not the way it is now either. But the bands got along. The early founders were saying how well they got along compared to other cities. Now Dayton is also maybe 1/10 the size of those two cities too. So we don't have as many bands or as many places to play as those bigger cities do. Excuse me. No home entertainment then. You had to leave the house to have fun. Basically, there's no internet. There was no real social media. So if they wanted to have a good time, they couldn't do it at home. Essentially, if they wanted to see a show, you can watch a show on TV now if you have YouTube or whatever.